Thank you. Thanks, Hugo. So yeah, first, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. So just by introduction, we are a venture capital firm, started about 7.5 years ago. And actually what we have done is looked at the problem of venture capital, or the issue of venture capital as a problem, like an entrepreneur looks into a problem, right? And because at least back then we looked and we saw that most VC funds, at least in Israel, were not really making great returns. And what we have done actually is we're taking the VC model, traditional VC model, and try to adjust it to Israel. So we invest only in AI and cyber, so only very deep software technology. We typically start very, very early, so we start working with the teams when it's just 2-3 people. We have one in the room here, so 2-3 people just starting out. And again, the idea is to try to take those areas where Israel excels and then try to push it to the market really quickly. It works very, very well for us. So already 5 of our first 6 companies we have successfully exited. Very great, great performance. We're very happy with the results. So that's about us. But let's talk about the Israeli ecosystem. And we've been talking a lot about that, but I think it's a good opportunity to just to take a few minutes and try to understand what really makes Israel unique. And at least to me, I think there are 3 major components here that make this ecosystem work very well. One, which is probably the most important one, is the Israeli Defense Forces. I'm not sure about the star, the hat. It's not. I'm not sure it's the right one, but I think you get the message. So in Israel there's compulsory service, right? So at 18, every boy and girl they need to go to the army, and there are a few great technology units that have the ability to pick the brightest boys and girls from high schools, and actually the good ones actually start to screen people at the age of 15 and 16. So if you imagine a situation that you are, a top student in computer science or math or whatever, and you find yourself in a situation with, young people like yourselves at 18 or 19, given, a little bit of budget and a huge task to fulfill, that's roughly what these guys and girls do. And this is, to me, is very, very much like a startup, type of situation. And this is why it's no surprise where most of startups, not just we found, but most of the startups and most of the ecosystems, actually people coming from those units that have been doing, something that's very, very similar to startup already in their army service. The second component, which is also very important, is, and I think Abe mentioned it before, is the existence of multinational companies in Israel with big R&D centers. This is very, very important because if our startups were only about 2 people coming out of Unit 8200 or Unit Matzov or whatever, this was probably not enough because you also need this international experience and really understanding how those big companies work. So if you take, again, 1 of 2 or 2 people coming out of those units, but you add someone that has been working with Microsoft or Cisco or whatever for so many years, it adds to this mixture and makes this team much more robust. And then there is the third component, which is the global Israeli companies. We don't have enough of those. We struggle as an industry to make. This is of course just examples, but still the numbers are getting bigger, but not big enough. Again, maybe referring to a presentation before, but those are also so important for our startups because again, if you take someone that was working with Check Point, for example, for 10 years or for 7 years, and he saw the way the company works, and he gained all this management experience, and you add him to a few people that have been again doing maybe cyber in the army units, then you have a very good combination of people that can actually take a company from 0, not just to 1, and hopefully further on. I actually stole this slide from someone I know at the Tel Aviv University because it's actually very interesting. Again, we talk about Israel as a startup nation, but just to give you some numbers. So this actually shows the number of startups per 1,000 employees. And as you see on the far side, most countries, more than 80% of the countries actually have around one startup per 100,000 employees. Okay, that's roughly the number. UK is much better. Actually, about 8 times better, which is about 1 order of magnitude better, right? US even more so. So higher than the UK, about 2 startups per 10,000 employees. But Israel is more than 1 startup per 1,000 employees. So around 3 orders of magnitude higher. And I think it's a combination again of the will of Israelis to become entrepreneurs, and also of the ecosystem that really embraces it and kind of pushes it forward. So actually, I want to talk today about deep software. So, what those folks that are doing high tech in their army service, they typically do very deep software. So a lot of machine learning, a lot of AI, a lot of cyber, and actually most of our companies in the beginning were cyber companies because it was very obvious to take someone that was doing cyber in the army and then kind of help them out in the real world, so to speak, right? But this actually goes a long way, not just in cyber. So just to give you some examples of the way deep technology is changing the world. And the first example is still cyber. So this is a group of people coming from 2 very strong technology units in the Israeli IDF. One is more on the offensive side, one is more on the defensive side. So good combination of people that know how to play this game from both ends. And what they do, they actually look for information in the darknet where bad people hang out, and they look for information about specific attacks, someone that is trying to or planning an attack specifically on your organization, and they cannot just collect this information, but they can also help you protect. So with the press of the button, they can also protect your organization. It's all outside. You don't need to install anything on your organization. Very fast growing. The core team itself does not have people from big companies and international companies, but we help them recruit some very top executives from there, and they're doing really good. John, my friend here, spoke a little bit about healthcare before. This is another example of how big data and machine learning can also change healthcare, right? So GeoNux, again, people coming from the same unit, the intelligence unit, and also work for Imperva, cybersecurity company. What they're doing, they're taking full genome sequencing data, they move it out the cloud, and then they use AI and machine learning techniques to analyze this data and produce results that at the end of the day improve clinical results for people that suffer from disease or people that are about to suffer and so forth. So, and also doing very well. So another example of how you can use big data and use the same type of tools and the same type of experience that those people get in their army service, but actually be able to leverage to other areas as well. Automotive, another space that you will think, well, what's the connection between automotive and big data analytics and so forth. Upstream, what they do, they actually analyze the data that goes from the car up the cloud, right? About 30% of cars today are getting out of the factory lines with connectivity to the car. And at the end of the day, it's going to be 100%. So we're very close to a world where every car will be connected to the cloud. And when cars are connected to the cloud, they just throw up the cloud events on everything that's going on within the car. And if you smartly analyze this data, and again, you need to use specific and very complicated algorithms to do it because it's a lot of data coming from a lot of cars. So you may have hundreds of thousands of cars, and each car would throw at you some piece of data every couple of seconds. But if you smartly analyze that, you virtually know anything that goes in the car, from cyber attacks to frauds to bad driving to bad roads to whatever. So that's another cool example. And just before I'm wrapping up, some examples on the marketing space. Actually, one of our companies, Brent Toller, is going to present later today. But those are 2 other examples. Mintigo is a company that, again, collects intelligence, and they can tell you about, if you're trying to sell to an organization, they can tell you what are the odds that this organization actually wants to buy something and will buy something in the next quarter or in the next month. So they actually know to identify intents, who is going to buy something. Exceed improved the way, using, again, AI to improve the way brands or companies communicate with their leads and their customers. So, if you have so many leads, you cannot really have people, picking up the phone and calling everyone, and they do it automatically. So just another example. So just to wrap up, I think, they said that the world software is eating the world. And I think it's so right in almost every space that we look at. And it's not just automotive and healthcare and cyber and marketing, it's anything. And I encourage you to work with young Israeli companies. We want your business. We think highly of your business, and I think you can gain a lot from working with young Israeli companies. Thank you so much.